So we are currently live. Let me just get us over to Facebook.
May want to go barrel burner as one of the first reds. It's only 13.3 alcohol, but it's up to you.
Barrel burner, you want Chardonnay before the Chenin?
Oh no, were we doing both the cab and the Chardonnay?
Oh no, I didn't have cab. I only had.
Oh, I thought I sent you the cab.
No, just the Chardonnay.
Oh, no worries. Well, I opened the wrong one. I'm just gonna go grab a bottle of Chardonnay.
Okay. Alrighty, we're getting going here. We're just mirroring it over to Facebook, having our little lag that we normally do, but it looks like we are live over there. Very cool. And let's get the chat going. Steve and Martha Hewitt, you guys are the best. You're always here checking in from Columbus, Ohio, and giving Steffi a shout out. We miss you and Brian. Looks like they opened up a Giornata Nebbiolo from 14. So, yeah, and they recognize the tasting room pig there. So, and we've got somebody from, it looks like, oh, David Rappaport from San Diego saying hi to Steffi as well. So if you guys want to turn on your chat, you can do that if you know how to Zoom and then throw it over to the side. You're welcome to respond to everybody saying hello. But we're getting a few people checking in with us here, and then we'll get going here in just a minute once we know how we're doing. I know our team over on Facebook side of things will be able to let us know. So, all right, Wes, you're back to the order though. You want to go Chenin and then
Chenin Chard.
Okay.
Chenin's delicious, by the way. I freaking love Chenin.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then Alianico, then Petite. And so that'll be good. We'll start and end with you, Daniel, and then Steffi and Wes are in the middle. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you for doing two wines. We don't normally do that, but
Sure.
It'd be a really interesting thing to actually talk about Chenin at some point in time. But then also Petite, I know, is your guys' thing. So
yeah,
that's pretty rad. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, looks like we're live on Facebook. Everything's looking good. Sweet. Let's get going. All right, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us for another Paso Wine Hour. I'm Chris Taranto with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. And today we are talking about the Highlands District. So if you're familiar with Paso, we're kind of this interesting big rectangle. And that far left side, the east side of this big rectangle that has an appendix to it as well, is where you're going to find two districts that seem to be a little bit removed from town, but definitely not removed when it comes to their worth as one of the regions in the greater Paso Robles AVA, which is the Highlands District. I'm just going to throw this out there right now in that the Highlands District, it's a pretty large area. It's got some large vineyards, large expansive vineyards. It's also the highest contiguous elevation of all of our AVAs. So while there are AVAs that have high elevations, this one has the longest of the largest amount of contiguous high elevation, which we're going to get into in a little while as to why that is special. But before we do that, I want to introduce who we have on the panel today. We have Steffi Terrizzi from Giornata Wines. We have Wes Hagen from Miller Family Wines, which is also the French Camp Vineyard. And then Daniel Sinton with Shell Creek Vineyards and also Avenales Ranch. And I'm going to actually toss it over to Steffi. Steffi, say hello, introduce yourself, and do the thing.
Hi, thanks for having me today. It's fun to be here. So yeah, I'm from Giornata Winery. We're a winery in Tin City and Paso Robles. Our focus is on Italian wines. The easiest way to describe it is I grow the grapes, my husband makes the wine. And we try to get to Italy as much as possible. It's been rough the past 12 months to try to go anywhere. But we really try to make traditionally styled Italian wines. Most of them that belong with food and on the table and with big groups of people. And we hope to start cooking and having some people over this year again.
Right on. Thanks, Steffi. Yeah, I think you guys had a trip planned right before the major shutdown portion in the spring of last year, as I recall. I think, weren't you at the airport?
Ryan was at the airport.
Oh, okay.
He actually had gotten on the plane to go to Milan, and there was some mechanical issues, and they deplaned everyone. And when he got off, I was calling him going, South Korea is grounded. You're next. You're not getting home if you go there. It's your choice, but I would suggest you stay. And so he ended up not going, but it did take, I think, 12 days to get his bags back from Milan.
Oh, wow. Okay. Crazy times. Right on. Wes Hagen from Miller Family. Hello.
Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for coming in. I could sum up my view of wine in one sentence, and that is a bottle of wine is an investment to keep the people we love at table for an extra hour every day, which is a very Italian sentiment for sure. I don't think I've ever seen anyone over 12 not drinking wine, lunch or dinner, and spending 4 hours at table. And I think maybe slow food, slow wine. What doesn't get better when we slow down and enjoy it? I work for the Miller Family Wine Company. I'm the consulting winemaker after spending 20 years with my family winery, Pepe Vineyards in the Santa Rita Hills. I also wrote 4 of the 7 American viticultural areas that exist in Santa Barbara, Santa Rita Hills, Ballard Canyon, Happy Canyon of Santa Barbara, as well as the brand new Alisos Canyon. And by the way, Paso, we do them one at a time down here, and the sommeliers kind of prefer it. But no, I'm all in. I love Paso beer. I love Paso wine. I love the Paso attitude. I love Paso man. I mean, how wonderful is it that on a 3 o'clock in an afternoon on Thursday that I am paid to sit here and drink delicious wine and hang out with wonderful people. So one of my favorite phrases in Italian, the only one I know is il vino è la poesia della terra. I'm sure I'm just ripping that to shreds, but it means wine is the poetry of the earth. So let us grab a pen and begin our verse.
Awesome. Right on, Wes. Good to have you. Wes, I think this is the second time I'm having Wes on, so guaranteed we're going to have a really fun and spirited conversation. Daniel Sinton, going to you next.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's a hard act to follow. I appreciate you doing that. So, no, I'm Daniel Sinton. I'm with Shell Creek Vineyards and Avenales Ranch. Shell Creek Vineyards is a 120-acre vineyard in the Paso Robles Highlands that my grandfather and parents started back in 1972. So next year is our 50-year anniversary. We still have some of those same old vines sitting in the ground, and one of those is the Chenin Blanc that we're going to be tasting today. The Avenales Ranch label is something that we started about 10 years ago, and has evolved into some Chenin Blanc and some Rosé, Valdegui, and then we have a Cabernet and now an old vine Petit Syrah that is really what we've been known for. I mean, for a long time, we've been growing Petit Syrah, and that's what the vineyard has been known for. So that's the sum of it.
Right on. Cool. Well, we're going to get into a little bit of the history of your family actually there, because your family is really one of the original kind of homesteaders, if you will, of the Highlands District, or that Highlands area. I think stretching back, all the way back to what the
1906 here on this ranch, in 1875 on
Yeah.
a ranch outside of Pozo.
And it's and your family name has evolved over time, I believe, if I remember that correctly. But there
Right.
ties into San Luis Obispo as well, right?
Right. Yeah. So we were originally Sinsheimer's, and my grandfather's grandfather was a Sinsheimer, and then in the war, we felt that people didn't want to do business with Germans, and so we switched to Sinton, which he just my great grandfather just kind of made up out of the blue, I think.
You could do that back then, I guess.
Yeah, you can still do it now. We don't have to be Toronto.
Sinsheimer, I didn't realize that that was actually the way that you pronounced it, because I believe there's a park named after your family down in SLO. Is that right?
Sure, that was yeah, and most people call it Sinsheimer, but the family's always called it Sinsheimer,
Okay.
and that was my great grandfather's brother was involved in that park and the naming of it.
So let's talk a little bit about your family's history, because they were cattle ranchers for a very long time. Can you kind of go through a little bit of the family history for us, and kind of what drew them to that area of the Paso Robles wine region, although it wasn't really a wine region necessarily back then?
Right. Yeah. So my great grandfather, who was a Sinsheimer, owned the store in San Luis Obispo, and he fell in love with the eastern part of the county here. He ended up purchasing a lot of homesteads out in the Pozo area, just a little further past, if you can imagine Pozo. And he collected 72 homesteads in this little valley, and that's the Avenales Ranch there. Avenales means the field of wild oats, and so that was the original kind of hit ranch, and then he expanded from there onto the ranch where the vineyard is, which is south of Shandon and east of Creston. A lot of people know it because it's on Shell Creek Road, which is known for its wildflowers. And so when people are out tromping around enjoying the wildflowers, either on foot or in their car, they're on our ranch, and that's the same ranch that we found in 1906. And in 1972, my grandfather, we'd been in the cattle business ever since 1875, and we still are. We currently raise a cross of Hereford and Angus animals, and we do that for beef. And we've gone organic on the whole property, so we've got a little over 18,000 acres of organic land. And then in the 70s, my grandfather could see that the beef and cattle business was no longer kind of controlled at on the farm side of things, and so we didn't have any leverage, and so he needed a way to diversify. And my uncle Tom had gone to enology school at Davis, and so he was able to kind of wrangle my grandfather and my parents and say, hey, this region is truly wonderful for growing grapes. And obviously he had amazing foresight. We were some of the first 500 acres planted in the county. Wow. And so we planted Petit Syrah, Chenin Blanc, Merlot, and Cabernet, and we still have the same Petit Syrah and Chenin Blanc vines, and we've replanted some Cabernet, and now we have some Valdegui as well, which is enjoying a really nice kind of, I don't know if I can call it a resurgence, because it never surged, but it's finding some really neat new ways of people making wine with it. So
is that older stuff still on its own route?
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, big giant things, you can wrap.
Yeah, and I'll show a picture here in just a little bit of one of those trunks, actually, when we get into the wines. I think one of the interesting things that you had mentioned as far as Shell Creek being named after that creek there, and I think as the history says, is that it got that name because you find little shells. Once again, we're an ancient seabed here, and so you're going to find a lot of that old seabed stuff, how we're, the sedimentary kind of older eroded away types of soils. And so these little bits of shells, I went out to see the wildflowers earlier this spring. And sure enough, we were kind of walked in that creek for a little bit. I'm not sure if we were trudging on private property or not. Sorry if we were, but my kids were digging it because they were picking up little shells and going, wow.
Oh yeah, no, I spent most of my childhood, and my children are doing the same now. Tromping around, finding seashells and sand dollars and shark teeth and those types of things. So
Yeah, so fun out there. The geology of the Highlands District is definitely unique, because when you go out there, I mean, it's the furthest thing from the ocean here. And I know when you get over into some of the Western Hills, where you go like to maybe the Whalebone Vineyard or other places that have this oceanic themes, you're almost expecting it, and you see a lot of uplift and everything else. But over there in the Highlands District, it's not as in your face. You do have to look at it, but it is so incredibly interesting and so incredibly unique. I know, Wes, we were going to talk hopefully a little bit about the geology of the area over at French Camp in particular.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. First of all, I want to thank, now I can tell all my disc golfing friends at Sinsheimer. And I did have a year of college German, so I'm a little embarrassed that I haven't been saying that. But yeah, between Whalebone and Sinsheimer, this is not only a great conversation about wine, but also of the elevation of disc golf on the Central Coast. So thank you, and that's a wonderful thing. And also thank you for planting Shell Creek in '72, because that was a year before we bought and planted French Camp, which means you guys were the ones who led us to the idea. And an amazing thing to choose Petite Sirah as one of the original grapes, because I think, Petite Sirah in the Highlands District is arguably the best Petite Sirah in the world. And as far as I know, no other Petite Sirah that I know of has scored over 95 points in Parker or Galoni, but it has stuff out of the Highlands District has. So, to me, I would say, the Highlands District to me really represents the elevation, the diurnal shift being 50 degrees between April and October. So cold nights, hot days has such an important influence on exactly how the grapes grow there. There's a lot of that sort of alluvial but cemented sandy topsoil, which seems to force the grapes to struggle a little bit to get not only nutrients, but down into, at least at French Camp, a little more of the ferrous clay subsoil, which feeds these vines a little bit of water and nutrients during the hottest and most difficult parts of the year. And if you've never been south of Shandon and east of Creston, there's probably a reason. You have to have a very good reason to drive out there. I think last time I drove downtown Paso to French Camp, it was like 11 miles and it took me like 42 minutes. So it is not an area. If we had a tasting room out there, we'd probably not only, still be waiting for our customers, we'd probably still be waiting for someone to apply for the job. This is not a vineyard that was planted by propinquity. This is a vineyard that was planted very purposefully in an area that would produce 28 different varietals of incredible wine grapes. And it is the engine of the Miller Family Wine Company and the potential for all of our growth in that 1,400 acres that was planted as French Camp. And of course, French Camp Vineyard is named after sort of the Basque intrigue. Jack Powers' gang came in and killed a couple of Basque shepherds. And stole one of their wives, and it was a horrible, terrible thing. And one of the great parts of that story is that the posse they got together was so good at what they did, they actually stayed in power long enough that, sort of like the Mormons in Utah, the federal government finally had to come in and sort of remove them from power because they were so good at keeping the peace, so to speak. So I think the Paso Robles Highlands District, to me, it's such a wonderful place, because not only does it have intrigue historically, not only does it make amazing wines, but it's got surprising grapes, Legrine and Chardonnay, making world-class Legrine and Chardonnay in the same AVA. I don't think there's really any place in the world you can really talk about that those cold nights and the difficulty in the struggling vines early in their lives really, to me, are what I understand about the Highlands District in studying the soil, looking at soil cores, reading as much as I can about it. But I'm also really interested in hearing from the people that have lived there, that have grown up there, because I'm here to learn as much as anybody else. I've only been making Paso wine now for 5 years. I've been making wines from Santa Barbara County for over 30. 25, 26 vintage just is going to have bud break this year for me. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some more expertise and some local understanding of this amazing little area, sort of in the, I guess I would call it sort of the southeast corner of the 11 Paso AVAs.
Yeah, and Daniel, I know that with your family history there, you've definitely seen, I would say, being that you live there as well, some interesting years over time. But I'm curious about, though, is from the kind of heat to cold standpoint, something that, and before we get over to Steffi to talk about winemaking from there, but talk a little bit about that diurnal temperature swing that exists out there. You live in it, you work in it. Share that.
Sure. Yeah. No. It'll get searingly hot out here in the summer. Obviously, we get into the 110s, and every once in a while we'll hit we didn't hit 122 like San Luis did this last year, but we get really hot, and then the nicest thing is that we get this nice cool ocean breeze coming all the way out here, if you can imagine that, even though it takes you 42 minutes to drive here, but that wind gets here pretty quickly and it cools it right down, and you'll get 60-degree summer nights. And during the winter time, it's just kind of the same thing. I mean, we had a 50 point swing the other day. It was close to a 60-point swing. We're in the 20s, and then it was that crazy January 80. So yeah, I mean, and that's really when my grandpa and my family decided to switch over and do some wine grapes. I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons that they thought that it would work.
Yeah. And so here I have up on there the AVA map, so you can see where the Highlands District is, and so where we're talking about specifically. But as you can see, it's a really large area. I think it's the overall area of the Highlands District is about 60,000 acres, I believe, as far as the AVA, just the AVA, not what's planted. And the Shell Creek Road is this little guy that kind of almost splits the AVA. The eastern portion here is Sunwon Creek, and so interestingly enough, it is its own little AVA that borders its east side there, but it's a really large AVA. Steffi, how did you end up finding, for one thing, Giornata, you guys specialize in Italian varieties, and so that's kind of your thing, but how did you learn about Aglianico out there? I mean, like Wes said, you have to go out there to want to be out there. So talk a little bit about that, and also what makes it so special.
Well, I got a call, I want to say in 2008, from a gentleman who identified himself as Hank Ashby on the other line. And as I started talking to him, he said, I am the kind of grower and kind of head honcho out at French Camp Vineyard in Paso Robles. And I was like, where is that even? I had no idea. And he said, I have this block of Aglianico, and I planted it for Randall Graham, and it went into one of his blends. And as he's been selling off bits and pieces, he said, they don't have a use for this anymore. The wine group doesn't want it. They can't pronounce it. I can't pronounce it. I don't know what it is. It's just a few years under that we grafted over from something else. And he said, I've brought up this grape, which most of the time I have to spell it and show it to people on a piece of paper. And every single person has said, call Steffi Terrizzi at Giornata. She can probably help you. So he said, I'm calling you to see if we could meet and talk and just see if this goes anywhere. So he sent me directions, emailed me directions, and I typed in the address on my TomTom, I think at the time, and got in the car and started driving out. And at a point, you turned off, and I was like, I haven't been further than this point before in Paso Robles. And I mean, am I going to Bakersfield right now? Where am I right now, especially? So as I'm driving down, pretty soon there gets a point where there's no cell service, there's no houses, you don't see anything at all. And then you turn onto Shell Creek Road, And then, yeah, you're driving and you're like, what? Like nothing, no houses, nothing. And you're like, my car could break down. No one knows where I am. This is crazy. And so I'm driving through, and then you kind of turn off, and then you start going up through these hills and veering around and up and down. And suddenly I came up over this hill. I went through a gate that did say French Camp Vineyard, and I'm like, yes, got it, I'm here. And went through it, and you go up and over this hill. And as you come down, it must be almost the view of what we were seeing from French Camp, because it's just like vines and vines everywhere. It's like my first time going through that tunnel, and you see the Golden Gate Bridge as you're driving in through to San Francisco. It's like, oh my gosh, it was exciting. And as I pulled in around the corner, I looked over and I saw like a nursery block of head train vines. And I was like, that's rootstock. What the hell is going on out here? Like I was really excited. And as I got in and met Hank, and we became friends and started talking, and he was explaining how they did things, and they grew their own rootstock there, and they made their own vines and put them in the ground. And we went, and he gave me a tour of the property, and we went from block to block to block. And he just really had a vivid idea of, this is what I'm doing with this block. We're replanting this block, and this is our goals, and this is our this. And from being a very young vineyard manager, I was just like, wow, what an amazing guy. And I still think he's one of the people that have made the most impact on when I walk onto a piece of property, what I'm looking for, what I hope to achieve, how I organize my thoughts. But, I mean, we're in the car, and he's in his truck, and he's telling me stories about duck hunting. And he's got this shotgun right next to his leg. And I'm like, if we hit a bump, he's going to blow his foot off. So I'm thinking about the shotgun. And he's got the windows rolled down, and this tractor passed us. And in the middle of his story, he had to tell me to stop, or hold on a minute. And he picked up his CB and radioed in that the bearings needed to be replaced on tractor 2496, and hung it back up, and then immediately went back into his story again. But I was enamored by Hank to begin with. And then looking at the property and hearing the story, hearing how it came about, how long it's been there. I mean, how could you not already love this property? So we get out to the Alianico, and it was very funny. There was 10 acres planted there. And I'm like, wait a minute, we make like 1,000 cases. I don't need 10 acres of Alianico. But as we started talking, I said, I'll tell you what, let's grow this together. We'll come up with some ideas together. Let's keep 2 acres. I'll take half. I'm going to help you sell the other half. So the other half goes to Chris Ferrara at Plessy Winery. And ever since then, it's been great. I love going out there. They're the most easy, wonderful people to work with. And yeah.
Cool.
I wanted to make a quick
Italian
comment.
varieties out there, Wes?
Yeah, there are. There's 28 different varieties, and everything from Alto Adige all the way down to, Dolcetto. I mean, you name it. I don't think there's Nero d'Avola, but most of the Italian varieties you could probably name off the top of your head, we would have them. And I remember I just did a little study on Hank Ashby. Think about this vineyard in the middle of nowhere. Hank Ashby's system of farming that he implemented at French Camp, which actually used a lot of the same concepts that the Australians were becoming famous for a little bit of mechanization, won him the California Association of Wine Growers Wine Grower of the Year. Not Napa, not Sonoma, this little vineyard in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it was, hundreds of acres back then, not quite the 1,400 acres planted it is today, but probably 600, 700, 800, maybe close to 1,000 acres planted. But the fact that Hank got that reputation from a vineyard that has never been seen from a road, never been seen by a tourist, never been seen by the wine enthusiast or Robert Parker, shows just how much of an impact that Hank had on the future of California viticulture. So all the love in the world out to Hank wherever he is today.
So Wes, Miller family and the various labels that they have utilize that fruit. We've got Stephy with Giornata that utilizes that fruit. Ballpark number of how many brands are sourcing from you. And then Daniel, I'm going to have the same question for you.
I'd guess there's probably 20 labels that probably vineyard designate French Camp. Not quite the same amount as maybe Bien Nacido, our other property, which is the most vineyard designated vineyard in the world. We obviously, French Camp, Bien Nacido, Solomon Hills. We started mostly in Santa Maria Valley, but we actually planted Bien Nacido and French Camp in the same year in 1973. I'd say maybe 20 are probably actively vineyard designating. Some years significantly less, probably some years a little bit more.
Yeah. Do they have to qualify, by the way, before they get to vineyard designate?
No, we do that. We do have a qualification for Bien Nacido. We have to taste the wine and make sure it's of ample quality to keep the reputation up. Generally, the vineyards, the wineries that work with us have no problem making absolutely wonderful and delicious wines. If there was ever a wine that bore the French Camp vineyard designation that we didn't think was carrying the water that we were hoping it would, we'd probably have a conversation there. But the thing is, I mean, if you're selling prime beef and the chef doesn't know how to put a piece of prime beef on a plate and not screw it up, that's a bad chef. We don't really work with bad winemakers, and good fruit leads to good wine. So it's a beautiful thing. And I appreciate hearing that story about Hank.
Yeah. Daniel, you have a number of local brands that source from you, and maybe even some out of area brands. Ballpark on how many?
Sure. Well, there's about 15 different wineries that we work with. And we've been really fortunate to have a group from Paso Robles of people, a lot in Stephy's area of Tin City, putting together some really neat wines. Everybody from Andrew Jones, Thatcher, and everybody. And I don't know, it's been really fun to work with everybody of all sizes, and people are making really wonderful wines and unique and interesting wines too. So
yeah, absolutely. And then when it comes to that vineyard designate, how about you guys? Are you kind of particular as to who says or who's able to put Shell Creek Vineyards or Shell Creek Vineyards, actually, right?
Sure. Yeah. The Shell Creek Vineyards thing is kind of cool. I mean, we have people we've worked with for 35 or 40 years that we continue to have vineyard designating, and I guess we're not quite so particular. Maybe we haven't earned that status yet, but we are thankful of the people who do that for us.
Yeah, awesome. Let's get into some of these wines, because we have people commenting over here about the Chenin. I'm even getting my phone texts, people saying Chenin, what? Because it is kind of an interesting and rare thing to be able to have. And I'm going to bring up the picture that you shared of that big trunk here. But first off, we're having the label. My halo light isn't allowing it to come through all that great. I'm so sorry. But it's the Avenales. There we go. So thank you, Wes.
Magic of the green screen.
What's that?
Magic of the green screen.
Yeah. Avenales Ranch, Shell Creek Vineyards, Old Vine Chenin Blanc, planted in 1972. I love the references to your family here with sixth generation, the Sinton family. It's sustainably farmed. It's small lot. You have who's making the wine? Daniel? You froze a little. We'll get Daniel back up here in a second.
By the way, the Lakers won the championship in 1972. I was almost sure they did, but I just looked it up. So that's a very important year.
So while Daniel is frozen, and he's going to come off and then probably come back on, let's talk about the Chenin. I'd love to hear your impressions of it, Wes and Steffi.
First of all, bless whoever has Old Vine Chenin Blanc in this world. I am an absolute fiend for the varietal, and it breaks my heart when I see that it doesn't have the same type of following that it should. I think it's probably one of the most incredibly expressive wines that gets absolutely no respect. I found that the nose Showed a little bit of lime blossom and zest, some beautiful floral character. If you really dig into it, you get a little bit of that wonderful sort of white flower terpene, and then a little bit of honeydew melon. I think the wine shows really good balance. It's crisp, it's bright. I'd be surprised if there was much oak influence. My guess is this is probably non-malolactic stainless, but that's just me kind of geeking out on it. I think it's incredibly well balanced. It's sunshine in a glass, so I mean it'd be great on a summer day. I want like 24 Morro Bay oysters stat, and no lemon, no sauce, no horseradish. I like the flavor of bivalves. I want to have just naked bivalves in a bottle of this and nothing to do for the next 2 hours. Beautiful, beautiful wine, and I'm also very curious to the price point, because I would be happy to pay a good chunk of change for a bottle of wine that's this delicious.
Once we get Daniel on. Daniel, there you are. Let's.
Yeah, sorry. You know, the Highlands may have great grapes, but they don't have great internet service. So here we are.
So we were going to mention your winemaker, Anthony Yount. Can you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for this Chenin Blanc. So before you freeze again, I wanted to make sure that we got that out there.
Yeah, you know, we're so indebted to Anthony because Wes was kind enough to give a much better version of what I would have given of the wine. And you know, Anthony is making marvelous wines all over the place, and we're really lucky to be working with him. Hillary Graves turned me on to him a couple of years ago, and I said we really want to make a Chenin Blanc. We were only making Petit Syrah, and said we really want to make some Chenin Blanc. And she said, "Well, I think I've got the guy." And so we met, and it was awesome. You know, he's so creative, and he's so thoughtful about how he's making the wine, and you know, it just gets better every year he works with it. So
yeah. And so quick little reference for everybody watching, just in case you don't know, Anthony Yount is the winemaker over at Denner Vineyards. He also has his own little brand called None Such Farm. Yeah.
Yep. Royal
yeah.
Nonsuch.
Yeah, I should know that. And now I'm probably going to hear from him. And who told you about him? Hillary Graves. She's exceptionally active and a great proponent to agriculture in our region, who's worked in a number of facets as a winemaker and a grower and so many other things. And so nice that Hillary was able to connect you to. Steffi, I want to hear your impressions of this wine before we move over to the Chardonnay.
This wine is great. I mean, it's everything Wes said. But this is, lately, and I don't know if this is the pandemic thing, but we've had more 2-bottle nights than we probably should admit to. But we've been opening, you know, we cook every night, but we always open a white. And this is something I should have in our cellar, that this would be something we would open a bottle of, each have a glass while Brian's cooking. We have a conversation. And, you know, it's just kind of, it's almost like the commute home that some people don't get, where it's a definite stop of the workday and start of the evening. But this is fantastic. I mean, it is a porch pounder, but also for us, it's that first glass of the night, like workday is over. Now we can relax, start cooking and being a family.
And I don't want to get too geeky on this wine, but 11.5 alcohol out of Paso. Hello.
Right. From an area that is as hot as it is depicted too, right?
I could drink this wine to sober up. No, it really, I do want to mention, my description, I think, was a little disingenuous as the wine began to open up, because this wine is as stony as the second set of a Grateful Dead show.
Nice.
Beautiful minerality. Beautiful minerality.
Yeah, I really dig this wine, and I wonder, you know, and I rather than going on about the wine itself, I wonder if the impressions of Chenin maybe turned because too many people were getting into that sweet Vouvray wines, that all of a sudden that was Chenin to them rather than something as dry and as pretty and as steely as this wine is. And so thank you so much for sharing this one, Daniel. We're going to get into your Petite here in a bit, but next up is the Barrel Burner Chardonnay. So if you'd be so kind, because my halo light, although it's working good this way, it's not working good for the label. Thank you very much. But there's the barrel burner label. Let's get into that wine.
Yeah, so the whole idea here is a broad market wine that brings Paso Robles to the forefront. When I'm out in the market and people don't know a lot about Paso, I'd be sort of like, well, you know, Paso's really popping right now, like Napa was in the 70s and 80s. And so I say it's kind of like, you know, I've said it's Napa style at Paso appellated pricing. And what I mean by that is it has richness, it has verve. We're not trying to make a wine that out butters Rombauer. We're not trying to make a wine that out oaks another super oaky wine. We want the wine to show, you know, the French oak treatment, 11 months and a fair amount of new French oak. But we want this to be a sub $10 glass pour on the shelf for under 15 bucks. So it definitely, with the power of the Miller Family Wine Company, making as much as 3 million gallons of wine for broad market, private label, control label, and everything else. We are a very large wine company that makes also very wonderfully balanced wines. Clay Brock made this wine, who was the Paso Robles winemaker of the year, I think in 2010. Clay is an amazing, super mellow, amazing guy, a good friend, and someone that I loved working with. And I love taking these wines out because they feed the need for that on-premise. I want something that might give me that ripe California character, but it's still in balance. And, you know, at or around usually 13 to 14% alcohol. It's a wine you can have a second glass of and still feel pretty confident in getting home safely. To me, barrel burner, it's about style, it's about oak, but it's also about surprising levels of structure, some verve, and man, people like Chardonnay and Paso Robles. I'm like 50-degree diurnal shift. Yes. 1973, vines. Yes. We've got old vines. We've got those vines have plenty of roots at depth that they can continue to be successful in very hot spells. And I'm always surprised, that you'd think Chardonnay and Paso is going to come in July. It hangs. It holds on to acidity because of those cold nights. If you don't know, when the nights get under about 55 degrees, the vines close all the stomata on their leaves, and as a result, they stop respiring. So no loss of acid, no loss of water. They're preparing for a frost event. So that kind of chill, even under 55, has a profound impact on the quality of what are normally considered cool climate varieties like Chardonnay that are absolutely making really great wine in a Winkler Region 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Steffi, curious about your thoughts about this wine.
I love the acidity in here. It has a real vibrance to it. And I'm wondering, the pH of the soil where these vines are, is it above 7, above?
It's not that, well, it's got some alkaline topsoil as is referenced by the geology and the breaking down of the geologic parent material. But I would say it's probably balanced 6.5 to 6.9, probably down in the more subsoils of ferrous clay. And that's really where the magic happens. Clay is those positive charged ions,
Mm-hmm.
The anions that are basically giving us the ability to pick up nutrients and micronutrients from the soil. So it's this magic combination of really low vigor, awful concrete, sort of, similar in La Panza, sort of alluvial, hard pan sand. And once the vines do their work for about 5 years, they break into the magic that's holding the water and the nutrients. So it's this beautiful story of perseverance, right? The vines struggle and struggle and struggle, and eventually, maybe they're still struggling above ground, but they're reaching sort of an oasis of that clay that has water holding capacity and also the cation exchange capacity to make sure that they have the nutrients and the nibbles that they need.
Yeah.
Daniel, your thoughts on the wine?
Well, I following two very competent winemakers with a vintner is maybe not setting me up for success, but I love a lot of the things that are coming out of French Camp, and I've actually never had the barrel burner before, and so this is a real treat to be able to come on and be a part of this and really just listen and learn. But the wine is obviously a wonderful representation of the area.
Yeah, it
And
really,
not acidulated, by the way. It's about, I think, 3.38 pH and about 6.5 grams of acid.
Mm.
And to get that out of a region 4 is basically impossible. I mean, the
I
only
think
reason
what I
it happens-
find really cool about it coming out of a region 4 is that, to me, when I think of that, I think heat, I think warmth, I think that this is probably going to be a little bit more tropical in nature, and it's not. It hints at tropical. It hints at little bits of maybe some pineapple or even some papaya, but it's not going crazy jungle on you. It's actually staying really firm and giving you really a lot more depth than you would think from something that would be coming from a warm region.
Emile Pinaud uses my favorite phrase, which is three words: edge of perception. And what he says is, all great wines, when we talk about complexity, what are we really talking about? We're talking about aroma, flavor, esters at the edge of perception. So you have to be careful with the edge of perception, because you don't want to tell everybody what you smell, because you don't want them to think, reading your notes, that they're broken because they're not smelling fig when I smell fig. But I do think the greatest food in the world, if you talk about the greatest meal you've ever had at a Michelin star restaurant, white truffles or whatever you're talking about, there's always flavors at the edge of perception. And I think, to me, to make a broad market wine that also has a level of complexity with a bunch of aromas and flavors at the edge of perception gives people at this price point the ability to jump in and to understand what fine wine really tastes like.
Yeah, remind us the price point, please.
Oh, it's like, you'll find it between $12.99 and $14.99 on the shelf. And if you go in and are drinking it by the glass, it'll be about $10 or less, by the glass.
Great. And then while we're talking pricing, Daniel, Chenin Blanc from Avenales Ranch. First off, price point. Second, where do you find it?
Sure. Used to be able to find it in restaurants whenever we were able to go to those. And but yeah, we're mostly direct. We've got things kind of scattered out throughout California, but it's a $40 retail.
And worth every penny. If you want to do some trading, I want some.
All right. Sounds like.
Let's get the label up for Giornata, if somebody would be so kind, or if everybody would be so kind, since mine is blinded out. But we have the Aglianico from French Camp. Let's flip it around for the back label. This is something I wanted to do earlier, is that it is vineyard designate. And so Steffi will talk a little bit about this Aglianico.
Yeah, so
then I think I have a video, right? I have a video of a tractor and you guys processing. I'll play it while you're talking, if that's all right.
We when we first started getting these grapes, meeting with Hank, he wanted us to pick these into gondolas, and I tried to explain that we're really a small winery and we can't really accept gondolas in any way, shape, or form. And so he said, well, let's hand pick this. That'd be exciting for the crew, and they don't get to do it very much out there. And so we started, we do this all hand picked. The fruit usually comes in, and because it's a pretty far drive from French Camp to get here, it usually doesn't get here until about noon or so. So the fruit is pretty warm. We process immediately. We leave these on the skins for a little extra maceration, not too much though. This wine is aged in neutral barrels for about 18 months, and then we throw it in a bottle.
Wow, those berries look really plump. It's amazing you get such beautiful color out of such a skin to juice ratio. Those are beautiful.
I am going to be honest with you that I don't think that's Aglianico. But thanks for calling me.
What about this?
I'm just giving you credit where credit's due. I've been married 21 years. I know how this works.
I think that was Barbera, actually, by looking at that, and also looking at the number of leaves in there. I'm going to guess that's the Barbera vineyard. But yeah, this is just a press. We actually we do a little drawdown on the Aglianico, really just about a 55-gallon barrel's worth out of about the 6 tons that we pull off French camp, and it goes into our little rosé mixture, mostly rosado, Sangiovese based rosé. But yeah, pretty fun. What I love most about this wine every year since we've been making it is one of the first things that I smell on the nose that really jumps out to me is like this violet component, and it's really pretty. And the one thing I really love most about wine is that sometimes you'll taste or smell something that will take you back and just you'll immediately think of a person or a meal or a food or an experience you had or something. And when I smell this wine, I think of my grandmother. And I would sit in church with her, and my parents were in the choir, so I would sit with my grandmother. And eventually I would start squirming, probably after about 7 minutes or so of church. And she would pinch me. And then when the pinching, I just kept squirming more and more. She would empty her entire purse out of candy. And the last thing that I would get to were those little violet candies from the 1950s that taste like soap, but they smell just like the nose of this wine. There's this beautiful, floral, elegant, pretty thing that I just love about this wine. Some years we get a little black pepper on the nose as well. But I love this wine. It goes great with lamb ravioli that we make up at Eto. I love this with pizza with Calabrian chili oil on it. This wine can take heat. And it's like Cabernet, but it's acidic. It's got the structure of Cabernet, but it's got that nice acid that just kind of washes everything down at the end.
We have a neat question here, and we've had a couple questions about Aglianico, like how much Aglianico is actually grown in Paso, but also how does it compare to, say, the Aglianico that you also source from a vineyard that you actually manage, which is the Lunamata vineyard.
So when we've been making the Lunamata Aglianico since 2006, and the berries are about half the size, and I think it's just growing on those crazy hills, and they're just really, really small. And but I mean, the birds don't really eat either of these. I think they're too acidic, they're too tannic. They're just totally different. The French camp, what's really interesting is in southern Italy, Aglianico always grows on volcanic soil. So in Campania on Mount Vesuvius and in Basilicata on Mount Volturre. And the French camp reminds me a lot of that very inland style of Aglianico grown in outside of the Terrizzi region. And, you know, it's got this real tobacco, and it's more kind of these, I don't know, kind of savory kind of flavors. And then the one down in Basilicata, I get a lot of the flavors from the other Aglianico grown up at Lunamata. It's more, I don't know, almost like iron in a glass. I mean, there's no fruit to it. People are always like, what's the fruit on here? And I'm like, it's a Dr. Seuss fruit. It's like furry and blue, and it fizzes in your mouth, and it doesn't really exist. But the French camp, the balance on this wine, it's earthy, it's spicy, it's fruity, it's got that little leatheriness to it. But the alcohols have been all over the board with this vineyard. I think the 2017 was 13.8, and I think this one on the label is like 14.5, it says. And I don't know if it's actually 14.5 or else we were just printed labels before we ran our alcohols all the time. Yeah, it might have been more of a guess, but typically this is usually under 14%, but yeah, this one says it's 14.5. But yeah, this wine is just, yeah, great on the table. Lamb, we did a dinner, and we found out there was a lot of vegetarians coming, and we were pouring both our Aglianicos, and I thought, what can you do? What's going to take this? Well, I mean, I was planning on serving lamb. What are we going to do with this? And we did chipotle and pasta and the smoky cheddar sauce, and it was fantastic with this wine. So I can go vegetarian. I just prefer not to.
Yeah, excellent. Absolutely a delicious wine. Wouldn't you say, Wes?
Well, I find most Italian wines, when they're authentically Italian and they're grown in Italy, to have a sanguine character, or what Emilio Alteri described as sucking a wound. I prefer the term sanguine, but I also like the visceral character of sucking a wound. There is something bloody about real Italian red wine. And this wine has a real tannic structure that gives that sort of iron-like quality that you would get in that sort of sanguine character. I find that because the fruit character is a little sublime, that it allows the other more delicate aromas to come out of the young wine. It doesn't have a lot of fruity baby fat, which is lovely because that's not the way we drink wine in the United States. We don't have to wait 10 years because we can't, because we have no frickin' patience. We're Americans. But if you want to taste some of the sort of the floral character and some of the complexity of this wine, it's prevalent. It's happening right now in the glass because there's not a lot of, you know, a lot of people fault California wine as being overtly fruity. This wine has a lot of youthfulness to it, but I don't find a lot of that, you know, sort of blueberry, blackberry, sort of raspberry compote that would kind of cover some of the things that are really coming out in this wine that are profound, delicious, and complex. So I'm thoroughly enjoying it and thinking about this Bozzino Robbiolo, which I think is a cheese from the Langhe, that I wish I had a big square of it in my refrigerator right now, maybe with some nice salumi.
Sounds actually really delicious.
If I don't make you hungry, I'm not doing my job as an ambassador.
We have just a few more minutes left, and we have a fourth wine that we don't normally do 4 wines. We typically do 3, but I want to leave enough time so we can get to that wine. Dan, for you to talk a little bit about that Petite Syrah.
Sure. Well, so kind of as we mentioned earlier, the Petite Syrah is what the Vineyards has always been known for, and so way back when it won the world's wine competition, which I think Wes was kind of referencing before with the 100-point from Benzinger, and so this wine is from the old vine. It's made by a different winemaker. Actually, he's up in Placerville. His name is Greg Stokes, and he has been working with the fruit since he worked for David Bruce. And so he's been working with the fruit, I think, 25 years now. And so I think he does a marvelous job with it. And I think one of the big things about the Petite Syrah in our vineyard is that it does actually, the tannins aren't overwhelming. It's not going to suck all the, you know, moisture out of your mouth, and it has a nice balance. And so, but I would love to hear Steffi and Wes's opinion on it.
Ladies first.
It does have a nice softness to it that I guess I wasn't expecting across my palate. It does have a softness to it. It definitely has that like blueberry thing going on with it, which is, you know, really delicious. And the alcohol is pretty low on this. I just saw it before.
Yeah, we typically try to pick it at 25.5 bricks, but and so that
it doesn't like coat and like hang on your tongue the way sometimes I think some Petite Syrahs do. And this is delicious.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, well, P.S. I love you, Petite Syrah, P.S. It's a beautiful thing. And as one of the 2 California heritage varietals with Zinfandel, we all, as Californians and Americans, should be supporting the varietal sort of accessions, the genetic accessions that we can own. Zinfandel, of course, you know, Kurgenic, Castellanski, Primitivo, whatever you want to call it. It is Zinfandel. It is ours as much as it is the world's. And Petite Syrah, you can call it Derif, but it's not. This wine has savoriness. It has baby fat. It has a little bit of that nice, rich sort of red and blue berry fruits. I think, as Steffi was sort of alluding to, I love the sort of the tension between the confectionery fruits in the nose and the tannins and the acid. One reason, Daniel, you're absolutely 100% correct that the wine does not leave your mouth tannic and dry and desiccated, because it has, I would say the pH is probably not over 3.6. It's probably got over 6.5 grams of acid, because this wine screams structure from both sides. It reminds me of Pinot Noir. in the sense that it's equally structured by its acid and its tannin. And I would, if I was a sommelier beyond a level 2 WSCT, I would say, what can't you put on a plate that has fat in it that this wouldn't match? It's a delicious one.
Yeah, really well put. It is so pretty and round, and it's not that Petite Syrah is always such a beast and an animal, but it can be described as such. However, this wine has a lot more of this kind of elegant mouthfeel that is quite easy to drink, to be perfectly honest. What is the alcohol on it?
I think it was about 14. Steffi, what are you gonna? Yeah, it's at 14 and a half. Steffi, what are you gonna pair with it at Edo?
Beef bolognese, ravioli would be amazing, or pappardelle with short ribs on top. That would be really good.
Yeah,
Italian cuisine and type 1 diabetics. I've got my insulin pen right here, so I'm coming for dinner.
Nice.
That's definitely worth the shot.
Well, I actually have a pound of your ground beef that Friday night will be for family burger night. So I'm really excited for your ground beef. I'm very excited.
Good.
Yeah, I was there for that exchange, and I was kind of thinking to myself, I might have to get over to J&R Meats and see about getting some of this Shell Creek Vineyards or Avenales Ranch, or I'm not sure what you're titling the beef.
Yeah, Avenales Ranch beef. Yeah.
But I like the way you were talking about it and describing it, and it sounds like it would be really awesome. So you guys, thank you so much. It's been a really fun hour, if you can believe it. We've already killed an hour. We've been talking about the Highlands District over in the Paso Robles AVA, which is, I guess you could say, arguably the southeast complete quadrant almost of the entire Paso AVA. And we've had a really great discussion. Steffi, Wes, Daniel, thank you so much for being on today. Next week, we have another show coming up. It's going to be the Winter Vineyard. So we have 3 people that are going to be joining us to talk about what is happening in the Winter Vineyard and what's going on. I mean, it seems like it's that time of year when it's just a bunch of brown sticks coming out of the ground, but actually there's a lot happening still, and we're going to get into that with 3 new guests. So thank you for joining the Paso Wine Hour. Don't forget to go to pasowine.com to go and see what's up next, some future shows and some past shows. Thank you, Steffi. Thank you, Wes, Daniel. Really appreciate you sharing your wines and your stories today. If you've got something coming up next, do you have any virtual tastings or what's going on? Wes, you have the punch down that often happens, which I find I try to tune in as much as I can, but talk about that.
No, real quick. Every Wednesday, I do a show at 5 o'clock PST on Facebook Punchdown Club, and we do an hour, either a deep dive. Yesterday, we did wine service for in your home at COVID, all the way through if you're a professional server, how to make another $20,000 in tips every year by selling 6 bottles of $50 wine on the floor every night. We do education every other week, and then we do an interview. I've got Doug Frost next Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
Kansas City, master of wine, master sommelier, and a disc golfer. We're going to be talking about how you can have so much knowledge about wine in your head and still drink like you don't give a crap.
Doug is great. I had him do one of my master classes some years ago, and he was awesome. He was great to work with. So I might, the punch down thing, I'm going to have to get you one of these t-shirts here, the patterned after a System of a Down, but so awesome. Steffi, you guys have got lots going on, right?
Yes. What it is. No, we're just, a lot going on. We're pulling some blends together to start to get ready for bottling. For me, even just closing out last year's books have been a stack of, I'm surprised it didn't fall on me during this. And then up at Eto, we're growing with the pasta, and lots going on. Soon ramen is back, gnocchi is back, all of those things. So yeah.
Awesome. So check out their website, check out Eto. If you can, there's some great stuff coming from them. Daniel, before we leave, once again, your wines are available on your website, right? What is that?
Right. It's avenalesranch.com or shellcreekvineyards.com. You could get there either way. And as for what's coming up, we've got, if it rains at all in 2021, then there should be some wildflowers, and hopefully everybody will come on out and check those out as well.
Awesome. Well, we are scheduled to get some rain, I believe, starting on Sunday, and it'll be spotty for a few days. So let's hope that we get that. Thank you again, everybody. Go check out PasoWine.com once again for the future shows. And thanks for joining us for the Paso Wine Hour.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
You're the best.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.